Hello everybody and good day. It is the 15th of October. It's a Sunday evening as I sit here recording this video, and today I'd like to talk about a topic I've been pondering on for a bit, and that is legendary creatures. You know, typically when I want to talk about legendary creatures, it's in reference to the bloat. We have a lot of legendary creatures in Magic the Gathering. In my opinion, too many. Since 2019, there has been an absolute deluge of legendary creatures being printed, and that's primarily because Wizards of the Coast has been leaning heavily into the Commander side of the game. They're trying to sell packs aimed at Commander players. However, while I do still firmly believe that there are far too many legendary creatures in the game, that doesn't change the fact that there are some creatures in the game that should be legendary for one reason or another. Now, there are two reasons I would believe for a specific creature card to be legendary, and the first and most obvious is that the card itself corresponds in one way or another to a specific character in the lore. The card represents a specific individual. Whether or not they're named on the card is irrelevant, so long as that creature card ties in with a specific individual. The second reason, and the less obvious one, is that the card has a legendary effect. And this is a bit more nebulous, and in this video I'm only going to be covering a few examples of the first kind of creature card, cards that do correspond with a specific character. And if you would like a follow-up video where I cover a few examples of the second type of creature, then let me know in the comments section below or like this video. After all, if it's popular enough, I will be doing a follow-up. With that said, let's begin with a handful of examples I've kind of cherry-picked from throughout the years. Now, before we get too far into this, of course, I want to make an exception for the characters of Arabian Nights. You see, Aladdin and Ali of Cairo and King Suleiman, these were all printed before the legendary creature type exists, and therefore they have the best excuse in the world. Legends did not exist when these cards were made. However, all of the other creatures I will be covering in this video were made after the legendary type was introduced to Magic the Gathering, and so they really don't have an excuse for why they aren't legendaries. Now, with that little caveat out of the way, let's begin in earnest. Now, the first card on our list is the Dakmor Sorceress. Specifically, this is Tojira, the Swamp Queen of Dakmor. She is a kind of a nefarious individual. She is the primary villain of the Portal Second Age set. She's a witch, a sorceress, whatever. She kind of takes up residence in some Thran ruins in the Dakmor Swamp, and she raises an army of these horrifying creatures called Night Stalkers. She arms them with ancient Thran weapons, and she goes to war with Aliborn, a war that Aliborn doesn't really come out of in the best of shapes, and it's kind of implied through lack of reference in future cards that Aliborn was either destroyed in this battle or the Phyrexian invasion, which does happen not too long later, wipes them off the map. The Dakmor Sorceress is a creature wizard who costs 5 generic mana and a black mana. She's a star 4. She's got power equal to the number of swamps you control, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a perfectly reasonable early Magic legendary creature effect. It's not out of the waters powerful, it's not crazy, but it feels fine for a character whose whole shtick is that she kind of takes control of a swamp area and uses her accumulated power to wage war on the other people of the continent she's on. There's really no excuse to me for why Dakmor Sorceress isn't legendary. Perhaps Wizards didn't make her legendary because Portal Second Age wasn't meant to have legends in it. But even then, why go through all the effort of making a story for this character, giving her lore and flavor, and then just not including her on the card that represents her? It's such a strange thing to me, but let's move on. During the events of the novel The Eternal Ice, Freyalise, a planeswalker, alongside characters like Joda, Jaya, and Kesa, weaved a very powerful bit of magic known as the World Spell, which undid the Ice Age of Dominaria, reversing the damage caused by Urza's Silex Blast in effect, thawing the ice and allowing Dominaria to heal after quite a few centuries stuck in kind of a not great situation. Now, apparently, as Freyalise concluded this spell, there was a creature known as the Tamanoa present. Now, the flavor text of Tamanoa states, when Freyalise spoke the world spell, the Tamanoa rose to bring a new morning to Terisiere. However, I just want to say I have read the Eternal Ice, I think twice now, and I do not recall any mention of this entity in the book. Perhaps I'm just misremembering, but this spirit does not actually show up in the lore. Nevertheless, this card clearly represents a specific individual, and more to the point, its effect, whenever a non-creature source you control deals damage, you gain that much life. That's a legendary creature kind of effect, don't you think? This is clearly a creature that was intended to be a specific individual. It's got a unique kind of effect, it's got flavor text that clearly marks it as a unique individual, and it exists long after legendary creatures have been introduced to the game, so it begs the question, why isn't Tamanoa legendary? And it's not like with Dakmor Sorceress, where Wizards just didn't want legendaries in the set. Tamanoa comes out of Cold Snap, and Cold Snap has some pretty standout legendaries. Darian, King of Kjeldor, comes to mind as a pretty impressive one, so I really don't know what the excuse here. So, really, Wizards, why isn't this legendary? Please, go ahead and fix that, errata it, or whatever. Next up, I want to talk about the Demigod cycle from the Lorwyn Shadowmoor block. 10 of these. They are in the 10 possible colored pairs. They are all supposed to be godlike divine beings, and from the story we got, these are all apparently unique individuals. At the very least, all the ones we are told about are unique individuals that shaped the primal essence of the world of Lorwyn itself. So, it's strange to me that these 10 very powerful, very spiritually important creatures are represented on cards that appear to indicate that there are many copies of them in existence. It's really another example of what was Wizards thinking. The Lorwyn Shadowmoor blocks have plenty of legendary creatures in them, and these creatures all have pretty impressive effects tacked onto them, to the point where I'd easily see some of these seeing play in Commander, even now, even with some of the crazy effects running around. Lorwyn is a fascinating world, and I would love to go back there someday, with a competent story team, of course, and see what a legendary reimagining of these demigods would be, because damn if they aren't some of the prettiest creatures in the game. Some of these look absolutely stunning. Of course, all of those creatures are well and good, they all represent specific characters, they should all be legendary, but there's a cycle of creatures that stands out among the rest. 5 creatures in particular that kind of everyone agrees should be legendary. Of course, I'm referring to the Nephilim cycle. Dunebrood, Glinteye, Inktreader, Witchmaw, and Yortiller are 5 4-colored unique creatures found in Guild Pact, and these are the old gods of Ravnica, ancient abominations, monsters that feasted on the energy of others and existed solely to sow chaos and destruction wherever they went. They were dormant underneath the streets of the city for 10,000 years, and these 5 in particular awoke and wreaked havoc on the surface. It was an absolute nightmare, one that eventually came to an end thanks to Niv Mizzet, Rakdos, and some clever mana explosions, knocking them out of commission and dealing with the threat for now. I will never understand why Wizards of the Coast refused to make these 5 creatures legendary. It's so strange, and I know I'm not alone. This has been a huge request from the players for a long time to just make the Nephilim legendary, but Wizards has for some reason refused to errata these cards to have the legendary creature type, even though they've been happy about errataing other cards and effects throughout the years. It's just a strange thing. Sure, it's more for a flavor thing than a mechanical reason, but come on, these are 5 very specific creatures in the lore. Surely they qualify as legendary creatures, and the most standout example of cards that should be legendary. What sort of makes the Nephilim situation worse is that each of them really does have an effect that screams legendary creature. Look at Dunebrood Nephilim and its ability to make sand tokens, something that's basically not seen anywhere else. It's so strange to me that these were never considered as legendary creatures, or maybe they were. I don't know what Wizards was doing specifically when Guild Pact the Set was being made, but really, these should be legendary, and if anybody ever wants to use them as legendary commanders for Commander, I can't think of anybody who would say no. At this point, come on, they basically are legends, but they're one of many. There are plenty of other creatures in the game that should or could be legendary. What do you think? If you liked this video, let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you disliked this video, send a strongly worded letter to YouTube, and I'm sure they will cancel me at the earliest convenience. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I am gonna go play Bloodborne. See you later!